baby, and it's just this gurgling fountain of pure delight and pure consciousness. There's no constructs, and there's no there's bedtimes, like the child is feeling upset and they cry and they're hungry, or something's irritating them, or they're cold or they're hot, whatever it is. But when their problems are solved by mommy and daddy and they're okay, then you can become completely mesmerized by this pure consciousness of the child, and it's so beautiful. But the child's brain, billions of neurons with trillions of connections, is in a way, it comes pre-loaded. Like there's a certain neural architecture to the brain that's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of years old. And in another sense, it's got plasticity, ability to make new connections based on your experiences, your perceptions, your choices. So the child's mind is making something like thousands of connections a second. But it's not all a blank canvas. It's not just starting from nowhere. There are many structures within the brain, and many different, very complex structures. Immediately, the child cannot understand what they're seeing, doesn't perceive, but over time, their experience comes through these filters and these substructures, neural substructures, and the child begins to make sense of the world. So initially, the child can only focus at 30 centimeters where mommy's face is while breastfeeding baby. So the child's whole world is mommy's face. And the first thing the child does is to learn mommy's face and the nuances, the emotions that she expresses through her face and through the tone of her voice and through her body language. Even the pupils of the eye communicate emotional information to the child. It's brilliant, it's extraordinary, it's amazing. But then, and this is very important for psychology and for the personality development of the child, and the emotional, social development of the child. But then the child looks around, and initially it's all a blurry jumble, but then they adjust the curvature of the lens, and then something stands out, and what is that thing? What is this thing? What is this thing? And what can I do with this thing? Throw it, bite it, chew it. Can I eat it? The child is trying to understand what is good, what is useful to me, and so there are perceptual systems, features of the eye. Yeah, in the occipital lobe, the eye begins to make sense of these objects and give you a sense that this is what this thing is for, and this is what you can do it. And so, we build up our perceptual memory system, we build up our procedural memory system. Procedural is muscles and the doing of things. So you learn how to feed yourself. And over and over you have to do this thing before your muscles become more articulated and stronger. And you learn how to walk. And so the child initially is first learns to sit up and move their hands and move their feet, and then they learn to crawl, and then they learn to stand up and hold on to furniture. And then one day they start to take a few steps, and then they fall down again because they don't have balance. So the motor neurons, the motor mapping is not yet mapped onto the balance organelle inside the ears. So that's a sense. The balance thing in your ear is as much a sense as your hearing or your seeing and all of that. So you have to map your seeing onto your moving and your balance. And so over and over, the child learns which muscles to tense and which ones to relax in a sequence. And then eventually they stand up and they can balance, and then they walk, and then they're walking. And then there's a new degree of freedom and movement in the world, which is amazing. But the extraordinary thing is that it's built into our brains, so we don't just, each of us learn to walk from nothing, from scratch. If you take a 3-month-old baby and you hold them up above the ground and you move them along, then they start making this walking motion. So, There's an instinctive prefiguring, and it's not just walking. It's perception. Uh, okay, we'll get to talking, but it's many things. But it's many things that humanity have been doing for a very long time. Because we've been doing it for a very long time, it's built into our neural architecture. But other things that we've been doing for a shorter time, like reading and writing, is just a few thousand years old. So it's not built into our neural architecture yet. But yeah, so that's perceptual memory system and procedural memory system. Then there's the emotional memory system and the trauma memory system. And eventually you get to conscious awareness, internal representation of the mind developing these, you can't call it an image. Yeah, let's say it's an inner image of the outer thing. So the ball, right? So now the child knows what a ball is for, and they are learning to say the word ball, ball. So the child is recognizing the shape, and every time the parent repeats over and over, ball, 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 so the sound is hitting the eardrum, sending signals into the brain, and it's registered with the child. And the child is looking at the parent's mouth saying, ball, ball, and tongue, and they're mimicking. And then over and over this happens, and the child tries, and they say, but, and eventually they get to, and they say the word ball. And the parent gets so happy celebrating this child's achievement. And what they've done is they've mapped these auditory signals with visual signal, with motor signals. So in order to speak, you have to send motor signals to muscles. These are all muscles uh, controlling all of these things, even in the voice box. So the child doesn't know that, okay, now I'm sending this signal to that muscle to tell it to do this. It's all happening intuitively, quasi instinctively, you know. And there's a part of the brain, there's these two parts of the brain, the Broca's area and Wernicke's area. The Broca deals with understanding speech, and Wernicke's deals with uh, producing speech, and these are there when you're born. They're not fully formed. They have to acquire the particular language, whether you speak English or Arabic or Zulu or Russian or German or whatever you speak. Your brain is going to receive the incoming auditory signals and pattern them according to Broca's uh, neurological architecture. And so now you're sending motor muscle signals through your voice box and your tongue and your lips, and they all are involved in this the production of speech. You're making sounds so that other people can hear you and understand you. It's fascinating, and now it's perceptual and it's procedural memory. Why can't we remember the first few years of our life? And it's not because we were small or anything, but it's because our brains weren't sufficiently developed. So the perceptual, procedural, emotional memory systems weren't developed enough to give rise to what we call episodic memory, which is the memory of events and things happening to you, and what we call semantic memory, which is factual knowledge about things and how things work and operate in what you call things, and conceptual understanding of things. And what we find is that they go hand in hand to work together. So you can't have episodic memory of what is happening to you without knowing what the things around you are. So you learn that the knife is dangerous, potentially dangerous, or the heater, if you put your hand there, you're going to burn. And so, yeah, at age, let's say 2, they call it the terrible twos, because that's when we also develop our sense of I am, um, and I want, and what we call the beginning, the dawning of symbolic imagination in the life of a child or of a person. So, from that point on, with these inner representations, the child can then begin to express these in terms of play, in terms of uh, art. They begin to draw stick figure and a house or car or something. It shows that there's now this inner representation, and the child can create a symbol that represents the outer thing. And at the same time, they're learning to read and write, engaging with the many, many symbols that we have created, and beginning to recognize those symbols. But there's more to it, you know. So, symbolic imagination, and this is more the purview of the right brain. So, the right brain, maybe this is a good time to talk about right and left brain. I'll go into more detail later, but the brain works essentially, the neurons uh, are reaching out to each other, and they are looking for, firstly, differentiation and then categorization. So, how are things different from each other? You know, this blurry original vision of the child is differentiated into different things in their view and different, eventually, even different ideas. You know, so differentiation makes this blurry, monolithic world into many, many things, the 10,000 things of the Chinese philosophy, but actually it's millions of things, many, many things, you know. So it differentiates. But now categorization comes in and says, okay, how are things similar? So this thing and this thing have that thing in common. Let's say color. So that thing and that thing are blue. But color is not necessarily a very useful similarity. So that thing and that thing are round. That thing and that thing have four legs. That thing and that thing have four legs and these prickly ears and these whiskers and these kind of sharpish teeth. And so that's a dog, you know, and so now the child can recognize all different kinds of dogs. And, you know, so that's how categorization works. So these loose similarities, the right brain deals in that. So, like, right brain and left brain began because we needed two very different types of awareness of reality to be functioning at the same time. We needed this detailed awareness of the thing in front of us, as well as a peripheral awareness of what's happening around us. And those are two very different operational modes that require different kinds of neural architecture. You know, so the left brain neural architecture is more specific, more detailed, more sequential, and more, what can you say? You know, when you're doing research, you get correlation and you get causation, you know, so it's looking for causation, it's looking for direct root that this thing causes that thing, makes that thing happen. But the right brain is more correlational. So, like, that thing and that thing, they are related to this thing. You know, so it's this symbolic imaginative realm of the right brain. So we'll get into right and left brain later. But this symbolic imagination, in the development of the child, it parallels the the stage in human evolution, you know, and we can actually trace it back to something like 80,000 years ago in South Africa, where I come from. There's this cave, the Blombos cave, and in the deposits in the fossil record, they found these rocks that had these stylized etchings, these, you know, like zigzag wavy lines that showed that they were decorations, the first indication of human artistic sensibilities or expression and symbolic imagination, you know, to depict something that's not there. Um, yeah, so like before that, there were tools, you know, spears and bows and arrows and sharp rocks for cutting things and very practical things. But starting then, there are many more things in the fossil record that says, okay, humans are becoming more expressive, artistic, creative, imaginative, and symbolic. You know, so when you get to 50,000 years ago, that's the oldest statues or idols or figurines, religious kind of symbolic objects, were the Mensch and the Venus. So Mensch means lion man, and it's a German word. They found it in Germany in these caves, and it's a body of a man with the upper torso and head of a lion, and Why?